Welcome to the LifePro podcast, where today I have the pleasure of having Preeti, who is a conscious dating and relationship coach. Today's topic is intentional dating, which, it's been a long time since I've been dating, but, I imagine it's evolved tremendously. But before we get into the topic, Preeti, why don't you tell everybody about yourself and your journey?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's certainly a pleasure to be here with you today. And so, yeah, so my journey as a coach, so I was doing something else before coaching. I was actually working in a dental office for a nonprofit company, a dental company prior to COVID. And
Mhm.
just like a lot of people got stopped in their tracks when the pandemic hit and we had the shutdown, so was I. And so there was all this like time to account for. We didn't know when we were gonna get called back in and all that. And I'm someone who loves to learn. So I was always like, I had all this time, so I'm like looking for new things to do, hobbies that I need to get back to. And it was during this time that coaching kind of fell into my lap in the way that like literally like the ad for the Jay Shetty certification school just came across the screen one day, and I was already a follower of Jay Shetty and his work, and I already was very fond of the stuff that he was doing. So I was
Yeah.
curious, I was curious about it, learned about what coaching was. To my surprise, it wasn't what I thought it was, especially facilitative coaching. Because if you would have asked me back then what was coaching, I would have said like a tennis coach. Like I didn't really know much about it. So I was intrigued, and at that point, I didn't really have any expectations other than let me just, do some personal growth work because I was someone who was actually interested in. I read a lot of personal growth books, and so this was something that I was interested in doing. I'm like, hey, I have the time, so I did it. And what happened was I wound up loving it. I actually, when we started coaching each other in the school, I started seeing like this is something I truly enjoy actually doing, and I saw like another path sort of emerging for me. And well, dating, why did I choose dating coaching? Is because it was definitely something that I was always super like curious about. Being someone who I had my own dating challenges. I had friends who were like, successful professionals, and like on paper everything was great, but then the relationship side of life was not happening. I would go to networking singles events, and I would see like, I would, when I wasn't talking to people, I would people watch in between just to understand. Like, I was always very curious. I'm like, why is it that some people get so easily into relationships? And why is it that some people are having such a difficult time? If I got together with my friends on brunches, what do you think we were talking about? Almost every single time, it would be like our dating lives and what's going right and what's not going right. So when I had to ask myself, what is this niche that I want to get myself in? Like this burning desire to know more about this and dig deeper was like the path that I chose because I was so curious about it. So
Yeah.
that's how I started the whole dating journey.
So you mentioned like you started observing other people and how they interact and their body language. Is that the essence of conscious dating, just being very like present and observing, or what is the definition of conscious dating?
Yeah, I love that. So that's part of it too, is like, but more so of like, sometimes when we date, we're kind of following a life script that tells us that you go to school, after school, you get a job, then you find the person, then you get married, then you have babies, and you're so engrossed in like
Mhm.
trying to fit that, blueprint that we've been given that we don't actually know what we're looking for when we're dating. And like conscious dating is really taking that time to slow down, knowing who you are, knowing your values, knowing what is the like why am I looking for a relationship right now in my life? What is my intention? Am I looking for a marriage? Like just being very clear with yourself,
Mhm.
knowing what you're okay with, not what you're not okay with, and then being able to articulate that in an assertive manner or basically set your boundaries is kind of what falls under the umbrella of conscious dating.
Right. So how does that evolve from, people dating in their 20s to their 30s and 40s? How does that change?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, so you know what's really interesting? So I'm gonna go way back. So like if you look at, I think when people first start getting curious about each other in their teenage years, right? I mean, I don't know if you can remember this, but like when we were probably like in kindergarten or first grade, it was like girls are from Mars. I mean, girls are from Venus, guys are from Mars.
Right.
There was like
Right.
absolutely, And then all of a sudden, like, you get to the age of like puberty and there's a curiosity that develops and you wanna like you explore the other opposite sex, and people start forming like girlfriends and boyfriends for the very first time. But I like at that point in time, you're not thinking long-term relationship. You're just in the mode of like exploration, curiosity,
Yeah.
discovery. And I think like when you move into your 20s, there is a more of like there's more of an intention to look for like somebody potential, but it's like you have like this bright future ahead of you, and you're like very flexible because you are not settled in any kind of job yet. You're still figuring your life out. You're still figuring your career out. So there's so much like life seems to be full of so many possibilities. The pool is large because there's a lot of people that are single and also looking, and they have all this like energy, right? And I think like once you're in your 30s and 40s, like you do have a smaller pool, because you notice that as you get older, like a lot of people have started settling down, some have kids, but you're also more like aware of what you want. You are most people at this point are settled in some kind of career, so they kind
Mhm.
of they know where they kind of stand, and they know what's going to fit into their life. They know exactly what they're looking for and what's going to work and what's not going to work. So they're getting more aware, instead of kind of just going kind of on a whim. So this is the changes that I see developing through the life of somebody.
Yeah, and so when I was dating many years ago, these dating apps were not around. We had to meet people either at parties or conventional ways where we get introduced to people. How has that how has dating evolved through the years with this introduction of these apps?
It has actually evolved a lot. So I was doing some research myself, and what it shows is that especially now, like after the pandemic, like online dating has become like number one. Like it's the most, and I think the pandemic fast forwarded that, because when we were in the lockdown or we couldn't go out, like everything was literally at our fingertips. Also, I also think that's because, if you think about how things are today with Instagram and like Uber Eats and like ordering food, everything is so fast and people want
Instant.
it like, instant, right? So I can find
Yeah.
someone instantly from my phone, right? So this has become something that's popular. So today, like it's online dating is like probably number one, then bars and restaurants, followed by through friends. And then at work, it's like maybe like more on the bottom, which contrasts to what was going on back in like 1995, 2000, where number one was through friends. Like you would meet people through friends, they can introduce you, then bars and restaurants, then possibly workplaces, school,
Right.
family, and then last, because online was not so developed back then, online was the last one. And I think like even before, like in the
Mhm.
old days, like I think people would just have their villages or their community was kind of their pool, like people who knew people, like in their family,
Yeah.
friends, was really how they connected. But that has come, like now you have literally the world at your fingertips. So it's like, it's changed a lot. And I think
Yeah.
there's,
So most of my friends are married. I have a couple that are still dating, and going back to your point, I feel like when we were dating, there was less of a pool. We had less choices, so it was more out of convenience who you met or you were introduced to. Now I feel with the introduction of dating apps, they have more choices. And it's harder to make decisions and settle down because you kind of get grass is always greener on the other side when you see all these other things. Um, so how do we, what advice do you have for your clients that have that problem where it's like, too many choices?
yeah, and it can feel overwhelming sometimes. And first thing I would say is that let go of trying to find the perfect person. There's no such thing.
Mhm.
It's not that there's one soulmate out there for you. It's like you find somebody that you feel that you have a connection with, that you're compatible with. You get to know them. And even though they're dating apps, I do see a lot of people still selecting people that are in closer proximity so they can easily meet up. That's not to say that long distance relationships also happen, but people generally do tend to pick up people that they can access easily.
Right.
So even though there's dating apps, you get to see more of what's in your area, which is a plus. But I would just say, like, just like, you have to kind of let go of this feeling of like, what if, this is not the one, there's someone else there, and there's someone else there, and there's always going to be a someone else if you think there's this never ending pool. So it's really kind of just being honest with yourself and seeing like, well, what do I really need for myself? And just getting to know the person who you decide to go with and seeing where it is and just being very disciplined in how you go about it, I would say, because it's
Yeah.
very easy to get lost in that web of like hundreds and hundreds of choices.
Yeah. I think that the most important thing is in a relationship, to be with somebody that allows you to be your authentic self, be your true self, that you don't have to really change your ways. You know, you have your own opinions and they respect you, and you can live your life. And from my experience, when you're in the right relationship, everything just comes easy. There's no struggles. You know, obviously all relationships have barriers and things to overcome, but you can easily get past those. So it's, you know, it goes back to, we had an episode about intuition. I think that's a big part of it, is just listening to that voice inside telling you, you know, this feels right. Even with, you know, even with minor problems, it's normal to have minor problems, just to listen to intuition and just do what feels right. Um, I have some friends that use an excuse that they're not established in their career, that they want to make sure that their career comes first before they settle down. Um, is that something that you come across with your clients? And what is your perspective on
Yeah.
that issue?
Yeah, so I've heard that one many times, and you know what? It's like I think it's not something that fits into like a box. It's like it's an individualistic. Like you have to see where the person's coming from. If you're somebody who has this, you have a plan in your mind. Like you're okay. Like I graduated. I'm gonna land my first job, and as soon as I get that job and I'm like settled in within a month or two, I'm gonna start dating. And you stick to that plan. Fine, you've made yourself a plan. Like no one's gonna,
Yeah,
you have something set for you, but the problem comes when it's somebody who keeps making excuses like that I'm not ready syndrome, where like, oh wait, let me wait till I get to the promotion. Let me wait till this. Then there's something deeper going on that needs to be probed into. Like it could be that someone is scared of commitment. It could be that someone has some issue with a sense of self-worth. Like, there's something more going on than I'm not ready that has to be dealt with accordingly. Like you have to probe deeper. Um, the second thing that is kind of like a myth is that this belief that if I get into a relationship, I won't be successful. Or even sometimes, I think this has to do with perspective because um, again, like you have to ask the individual, like, why do they believe a relationship is going to get the way?
yeah,
Do they feel like they're going to pull the full weight of this relationship, right?
yeah,
If you've been in a relationship that's codependent before, that you were with someone who maybe sucked the life out of you, or you might come from an experience of like, I won't be able to do anything in terms of my career and my purpose. But the other perspective to think about is that the right healthy person for you will actually be like a support system,
yeah,
can actually help you get further where you need to. But this is all involves like proper communication, proper discussion of what to expect. Like, this is what I'm looking to do. And, both of you, like you both might have things that you have planned to do. So how can you support each other and come together as a power team?
yeah,
Actually can help you because sometimes when you're like, for example, you're doing entrepreneurship, right? It can be a lonely journey, it can be difficult, but when you have someone at the side that's like on board with you, it's nice to have that someone to come home to and like,
yeah.
even brainstorm with you. Who knows how they can support you, but it can actually be like a power team. So I want to like, really ask yourself, like when someone is afraid that a relationship's gonna hold them back, how true really is that?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. You know, if you're with the wrong person, yeah, they'll hold you back. But if you're with the right person, they're just going to add value to every aspect of your life, and your career is no different. So I'm a full proponent of that philosophy. Is there? I know that we're all different. But is there a optimal age to get married from your perspective?
Yeah, so I'm not someone who's big on numbers because I've seen it all. I've seen people get married in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s,
Yeah,
in their 60s for the very first time. So
right.
I don't want to put people in a box and say you have to adhere to this. I think it really depends on your own personal growth journey, where you're at, what you're ready for, what you want from life, your purpose for being in a relationship, and your readiness. Like sometimes people are going through things and they have to do the inner work before they feel ready to open up to someone. Some people are just ready to go. So
Yeah,
I don't think to place any kind of pressure or judgment, but it's just like being honest with yourself, what you're looking for. And if there's anything that's getting in the way, this is kind of what we do in the program. If there's any kind of resistance to finding love, we kind of uncover that and feel that through to see like, what we're actually dealing with.
So I have two things to say to that. From my perspective, is you have to meet the right person at the right time. Like I've seen it happen. I've seen meeting the right person at the wrong time, and I've seen
Mm-hmm.
meeting the wrong person at the right time, and that has a lot to do with it. I think also kids is a big proponent, a big decision for me. When giving advice to other people, is obviously being fertile. I see a lot of people that have issues getting pregnant at a later age, and also having the energy. Like I'm in my 40s, I have three young children. It's hard to keep up. It's hard to have that energy to give them the attention that they need. So that, I mean, that's another factor that you need to really think as far as like when you're conscious dating or your intentions. It's like,
Yeah,
well, I want to be
definitely.
able to, if that aligns with your interests. Not everybody wants to have kids,
Yeah.
but
And that's where I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's where like when you say the right time, I think the time falls under like a larger umbrella of compatibility. And this is
right.
what we mean by compatibility. Like, do you have like your long-term visions and goals, are they aligned? Like,
Yeah.
does one person want kids, another person doesn't want kids? Do you see like is one person telling you I'm not interested in marriage, and the other one saying I am interested in marriage? You're not really compatible because you're looking for different things. Now, having said that, I've seen like within my own circle of people, friends that I've also known, I've seen people who met like at one point in their life and it didn't quite take, the relationship didn't happen. And then you fast forward for one of them, it was like 3 years later, the other one's 5 years later, and I forgot the other one, but they somehow life brought them back together again. And this time the relationship took off and they're married.
Yeah.
So again, it's like the timing, like, and there are things I think to go deeper within just the time, like maybe at that point in time you weren't ready for whatever reason, or it could be that we're not the same people we were 5 years ago. We also grow, our preferences change. We become maybe more open as we become more wiser. So what maybe was not okay before, or you realize that this is not really that important. You've changed as a person, and now when you come together later, you might actually be a match now. So there's so many things that can come into play and reasons why so I feel like time is definitely a thing, but it's more like it falls under the category of compatibility for
Yeah.
sure.
I agree with that 100%. So one other thing I'd like to talk about, let's say you're dating right now and you feel like you found the right person. Um, you know, there's things that you don't think about when you're deciding to get married and that you find out later on in life. What suggestions you have for people, to either seek a counselor or talk to a marriage counselor? I think it's taboo for a lot of people. It's like, oh, we don't have problems, we shouldn't see a
Mm,
marriage counselor. But as
yeah,
a married person, I think it's a great idea to see a therapist and just kind of like talk about the things that you don't even know that
yeah.
experienced counselor or therapist can provide that insight and it help prevent issues in the future.
Yeah, and I think like first of all, I mean, I think the whole area of mental health has been slowly opening up. Like it has been taboo, like it's definitely in some cultures also.
Yeah.
I see it everywhere slowly becoming more mainstream. But I think the important question is that if you're dating right now and if you notice a pattern, like the same unwanted result keeps happening to you, and you can't for the life of you figure out like what's going on, but there's a blind spot, right? This is where like someone like a coach can help you out, or if there's something maybe even deeper in your childhood that's causing this kind of thing to happen, you might want to seek therapy for something like that. And be open to it because it's completely like the things that we cannot see. This is why a coach is a coach. The things we cannot see, we have to seek help for. If you broke your arm, you go see somebody to fix that arm, right?
Yeah.
Kind of adjustment. So if something is not there and you're having trouble and there's no shame in that, right? It's just what is going to help you get from your A to B.
Right.
And if I may, like what to help people, what to look out for, like some things that I see that people make mistakes with when they're dating is that first of all, there's early on there's a lot of game playing which does not like have any basis anymore because it's very inauthentic. People think that like if they're unavailable, they show up as unavailable, it's gonna like get the other person to chase them. And that may work in the very early stages. It's not gonna cause, or it's not gonna result in a long-term sustainable relationship. So I would advise against that. Second thing is people put too much emphasis on chemistry. That's one of the biggest mistakes I see. They think that if they feel chemistry or know the spark, whatever you want to call it, like that's the person for me. They don't look at anything else, but they're looking for the sensation in their body, which tells them, oh, this is the one. And this is a thing that if you're not careful and if you only base it on chemistry, you might wind down a path where you wind up with someone who's, gets the hormone, that gets the chemical stirring in you, but is unhealthy, could be toxic, right? So you have to search for compatibility. Um, what kind of character is this person? Like you have to look further, deeper than just the chemistry. There's sometimes the people they rush, they want to move too fast, and I would say that you want to slow down. This part of conscious dating is to slow down in order to speed up. Like take your time to get to know the person. This might be a little bit of a touchy subject, but like, there's research now that shows that you might want to try to emotionally connect with somebody first before getting physical, because especially more for women than men, once you actually get physical, once you have like sex, what happens is that there's certain feel-good hormones that get released that you can't control, like dopamine, oxytocin. Women have more oxytocin than men, so they get this attachment form much quicker than men. And if you're now feeling this kind of attachment for someone that you know nothing about, you're at like odds with yourself because your body's craving this person, like you want more, but then all the red flags are in front of you and your mind is saying something else. And this is one of the things that causes people to miss the red flags, is because they're going solely on the feeling, on the compulsion to want, it's almost like a love addiction to see someone again. And this is where you can use this information. Like some people are unaware of this, so you can use this information now to be aware and make an informed decision before if you notice that you keep getting into these like, stormy, tumultuous things that heated up passion and just end. If that's your pattern, you might want to just slow down and just go slow with this new information. That's how you can use it. Just being aware before you decide to make a choice. Again, consciously decide like, do I want to go this route or do I want to slow things down? That's where you can use it.
I love it. I think there's a lot of solid gold information there that, I think getting physical obviously clouds our judgment for on both sides, men and women. Is there, I think that there's a lot of important things that we talked about as far as, when you're intentionally dating for marriage, like, going down to how many kids, when where do you want to live, religious differences, how we're raising kids. For me, I think marriage is very easy. I think raising kids is where it gets very difficult. And I think that those are things that when you're dating intentionally for marriage, that really have to get settled and make sure that there's either you're on the same page or there's some form of compromise to avoid problems later down when you're married. So do you give your clients, or what suggestions, is there like a checklist that you kind of go through or
Um,
advise
I
them to look at?
I mean, there's so many things you can talk about. I would just say that the more transparency there is between the two of you and the more real you get about what this relationship is going to look like down the line, the more ideas you have about how this is all going to come together. There's so many things you could think about. Like I know some couples that have gotten married and broken up because this conversation, and you don't always know what's going to come in the future, but this conversation never came up about like, what if one of us gets a job in another location and has to move? And one person was obviously not okay with leaving where they were, and the other person was more interested in the job opportunity, and they literally moved and split. So these are things you have to like see, like if some circumstance like this would pop up, would you be open to relocating? If we had kids, like you were saying, like ooh, like how would we do this together? Like however you want to have the conversation, there's no wrong way or right way, but the more you figure out these little kinks ahead of time, like the more you figure out how to adjust better. So it's like this open communication, keeping that open door, I think is very healthy actually.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of important topics, that you need to consider. And, our advice to people is, just be conscious of who you're with and look at all the facts. And, love is not all the like what how do I say this? It's not all about love. It's you want the whole package. You want the love, you want the attraction, and you want it and all the, everything else to also kind of work. And that's where you're gonna have the most chance of
And
success.
the one thing I would suggest is that also when you're trying to figure out if someone is right for you, like it's very easy in early dating to see like one angle of a person and get carried away by this one version. Try to see someone as much as you can from a 360 view. Like see
Yeah.
them in their highs, see them in their lows. Um, Please, I would hope that you had one or two arguments before you decide to get married, so you see how you handle conflict together. Like let this
Right.
not be like some first time thing after marriage, and now it's like, you can see like how the person is, what are they toxic in these kind of situations? Like, do they not let you voice yourself? Do they come down hard on you? Are they derogatory? Or, are they like safe to be with? Do you feel like you can open up to them? Because if you don't have that like initial argument or conflict, you don't actually know, right? Because they're going to happen. All relationships have their arguments, but you need to understand like how you both deal with it. It's okay. Some people need to like have some quiet time when something, when a major conflict happens. They need to have some time to think to themselves, which is fine. There's some people who want to like deal with it right away. So it's like no, like having this open communication of this is what when the conflict happens, I need this, I need this. Well, what is this middle ground? Like how can we do this in a more constructive way? Because always remember conflict is not one person versus the other. It's you guys versus the problem, right? But sometimes we all get into each other's throats. Like we forget it becomes a battle as one versus the other. It's not, it's like the actual issue is whatever the problem is, and then how can we come together as a team to make this work?
Yeah, that's great. One question for you is how important is it to look at their own family life, their parents' relationship, or how their parents act towards them, and also who they choose as their friends as an indication of who you're getting
Yeah.
involved with?
It's super important because a lot of the times, like who, how, like our caregivers and the relationships that they had with each other, what they modeled for us is kind of what we learn to be like the right kind of relationship because we don't know. We're just watching what's right in front of us. So in your environment, like if you're around a lot of friends who are just getting like divorces all the time or people getting into toxic relationships, you're going to have a very bad idea of what a relationship is. And you're not going to like the idea of even a healthy one is not even something in your vision right now because you haven't seen it. So I think that that plays a major role. And if you're someone who's not had a very like healthy ideal role model growing up of a health of what a relationship can look like, you need to I think this is a great time to actually go work with a coach or a therapist or somebody to like help you uncover those, peel that onion off to see like the layers of the onions to see like your view of the world and like how you can actually see it, and then help you rewire yourself to a new way of doing relationships because that is actually very difficult to do by yourself, when you have years and years and years worth of conditioning that have taught you otherwise. Your support system, who you're surrounding yourself with, try to find more people that are in successful, happy marriages or relationships so that now you're seeing something else than always just seeing the negative. So be sure your surroundings support the direction that that you want to go in also.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
I think that happens very common is, as divorce becomes more prevalent, it's affecting the children's relationships because they have their fear of failure. If they see their parents' relationship didn't work out, um, they're afraid that they're going to get into the same type of situation. So it's important to rewire yourself and work with a blank canvas and have an open mind. And it maybe it affords the opportunity to be a little bit more cautious about who you settle down with. But I'm a firm believer there's somebody for everybody, and it's just a
Yeah.
matter of keeping your options open and just putting yourself out there and vulnerable to get into a relationship. And then when you find the right person at the right time, then it's meant to be. So the Life Pro podcast is in place. I like to say that everything life comes with a manual except for life itself. And I appreciate the conversation we had today. I learned a lot. One thing that I ask everybody is, what's one thing you want to teach the world? So I ask you, what is one thing? What is your mission to teach the world?
Yeah, so behind this dating stuff is I want to help people connect on a deeper level. This is something, especially in dating, there's a lot of like superficiality stuff that's going on. I've sometimes had clients who like, 4 or 5 months down the road, I'm like, do you feel like the relationship is progressing? Do you know this person any more than you did a few months back? And they're just kind of like, no. They're like, because they're always just talking about how was your day and how was your this, and they don't go deeper. So like establishing like deeper connections is kind of like so that you're not like in a relationship where you don't feel seen and heard. Like, there was a quote by Robin Williams. I'm gonna paraphrase because I don't remember how it is, but it was kind of like he was saying that I used to think the worst thing was being alone, but it's the worst is actually being around people who make you feel alone. And there's research and statistics that show like this was from, if you don't mind me sharing this, this is from 2018 Intimacy in America report. Like 21% of people in 2018 in America believe that they have no one in their lives with whom they can be authentically 100% 100% themselves with. 29% are not satisfied with their abilities to open up to people who they enjoy being with. So they enjoy being with these people, but they can't still open up. And 46% admitted to sabotaging their relationships to avoid intimate connection. So there's some kind of intimacy issue in like being vulnerable there. So it's like I want to help people break through these barriers so they can feel seen, feel heard. They feel like they belong where they, in their most intimate relationships, the person that you're waking up to next to every morning. I mean, I couldn't imagine like the suffering of someone who's in something and they just feel like they're just like they're behind a glass shield and they're not being seen. So I want to help people just really cultivate that. And for the people who also believe that, having a healthy, loving, meaningful relationship is impossible because maybe of their previous life experiences, to see possibility, to have that mindset shift, to see that what can actually happen for you. So those are the two things that I'm helping my clients with one by one, and like one by one slowly helping the world, I guess,
I
little by
love
little.
that. I love that. I think that we can seek deeper relationships with ourselves, with our friends, and our spouses. I think deeper relationships with everybody help us improve the quality of our lives. And I think being cautious and having that mindset does help, every aspect, including career, help us flourish. Communication is key, and proper communication, and setting the proper time to communicate with your spouse to build that relationship is important. And it works, it's a two-way street. So I love everything you said. Was there, I know you mentioned Jay Shetty, Think Like a Monk is one of my favorite books. I love everything about it. I follow Jay Shetty. I think he's great. Is there, I imagine you're going to say Jay Shetty also. Is there a book that had a major influence on your life?
Yeah. So there's more than one, and definitely Jay Shetty's Think Like a Monk was something that was impactful for me, especially because it came during the pandemic. I had gone through a certification school, so the wisdom from that book, the insights from that book, and the coaching literally put me on a different path, which is what I'm on now. But there's another book I also want to mention that that literally introduced me to the personal growth world back in 2008, and that was actually The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. And I absolutely love that book because I was in a situation at that point in my life where I felt like there were dark clouds wherever I went. Like it felt like it was raining on me where I was going. And I was in this mindset of like, why does this keep happening to me? Like I just thought this is the way it is. It was the first time ever when I read that book that I even understood or heard of the concept of law of attraction. I didn't know what that was. And when I understood it, it was like a light bulb went off, like, oh my God, I do have some say in what occurs around me. I can't control everything, but my energy itself is kind of calling into the things into my experience. So this was an eye-opening thing for me that I was like, oh my God, there is a way. Like, it just, and then from there, like I got more, like I started reading more personal growth books, more spiritual books. Um, it just, I literally went from like a part of my life I was reading fiction to nonfiction, like nonstop. So that really marked the birth of that phase of my life. So I can't ignore that book. It
Yeah.
was, it
And
was life.
I think you make a very good point. Like, in order to have a successful relationship with somebody else, you have to have a great relationship with you. You have to
Yourself.
be in the right positive
Yeah.
mindset, and you have to really manifest what you want,
Yeah. And I
and
want to
it'll happen.
say something like, so when I learned about the law of attraction it was great, and I was able to manifest like some quick easy things for also like the cup of coffee, a free bus ride, a free train ticket. Like these things were happening. But for like to have sustained manifestation, like for something to work, like the part that I would say that the gap that the thing that I was missing that I didn't understand was you have to do the inner work, because the inner work is what's going to help you to let go of whatever is keeping you on a lower vibration. Sorry. So when you're able to lower, get rid of those things and then lift yourself to a higher place, that's when it becomes easier to actually manifest. But if you don't do like the inner work, if you are trying to manifest, but then also at the same time feel like you're not worthy of something, it's going to clash. Like you're not going to actually be able to manifest as well. You might bring something to your life, but it's not going to be sustainable. So because energies like attracts like. So this is something that I learned across the way. So this is why it's so important to also do the inner work in order to be able to manifest more successfully in your life.
Yeah, I love that. So, how do people get in touch with you if they want to work with you and be part of your program, or even follow you? How do people do that?
The best place to find me is Instagram, like literally on there a lot. Like it's the platform of my choice. I'm on LinkedIn and other things, but like I think I'm, addressing DMs on there more than I am my own text messaging sometimes. So
Yeah,
find me on Instagram. My handle is at bestselfforward.pm. And if you're interested in working with me, DM me and we'll go from there. And if you're just interested in finding more about me and my content, then just follow me on there.
I loved our topic today. I had a lot of fun. It's very interesting. I think you're doing God's work, really, to help people like connect and build relationships. I think really commend you for everything that you do. I think obviously life, for people, a good relationships like restarts their lives and improves their lives so much. And being conscious and intentional dating, at the right person at the right time, I think is magical and really can transform. I know for my relationship, my life has continues to improve. My wife and kids are everything for me. And it's some people equate, marriage to like end of life and have that attitude with it's a
Yeah.
it's a different life, and it's better in many ways. Obviously challenging. Having a relationship is challenging. Having kids is challenging, but all I say is it's worth it. It's worth it.
I
So,
I love what you just said, because right there it was like a perspective, a mindset perspective. Like, are you visualizing marriage as doomsday, or are you seeing it as the beginning of an adventure of possibilities?
right, a
How
new
you
life.
see it is going to determine your whole attitude going into this thing. So
Right.
100%. I love that you said that.
Yeah, it's a new life, and hopefully, we're impacting a few lives here during this call and during this podcast. And I know that a lot of people will take a lot of what you said and hopefully evolve, whether they choose to work with you or not. I'm sure you've impacted some lives here, so I thank you for that. I thank you for your time.
And thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope we can connect again in the future as well.
Yeah, we'll have to do another podcast sometime. I ask everybody to like, follow, and share, and help us spread the word. Take care.